Hey, folks, you're listening to the Jobs Podcast. I am your host, Tim Hendricks. We've got a great guest today. His name is Brian, and most of you know him from DIY Outdoor Life on YouTube. I myself am a subscriber. He does all things with camping and teardrop trailers and campers and modifications and all the different gear that you can use, gear reviews and stuff. And he explains it in a phenomenal way. So I'm really looking forward to talking more about the origin story of Brian and how he became to be the expert at DIY outdoor life. So welcome, Brian. Thanks for joining me.
Hey Tim, it's great to be here. I had a good chance to check out some of your other pods. I love what you're doing, so this is exciting for me as well.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot. Well, let's go ahead and start. A lot of your listeners know who you are, but they may not know the backstory and just kind of how you became to be the guy that they turn to for advice on YouTube. So start with us. Let's go where you were born, your upbringing, and we'll just start from there.
So I had the privilege of being born and raised in upstate New York in the Catskill State Park.
Hmm.
It's a little over 100 miles north of New York City, and the older I get and the more I travel, the more I experience, the more I realize how formative being born and raised in the Catskill State Park really was. And that's where I'm still living. I have an older brother and a younger brother, so middle child with three boys. And mom and dad still live, just 4 or 5 miles down the road from me in the house that I was born and raised in. So I've kept it pretty local here in the Catskills.
Good deal. Did you have any early hobbies or any early influences that, because when I watch your videos, I notice that you have a lot of knowledge about how to DIY things, how to work on things, electrical work, plumbing work, stuff like that. Did your dad or your brothers or somebody have an early influence on you about how to be handy?
Yeah, for sure. They definitely did, but it's impossible to tell my story or where these influences came from. It's really inseparable from, understanding what it's like to be raised in the Catskills or
Yeah.
in a state park like this. I mean, I'll go into that for a minute because I think that was just so influential, but you know, uh, the Catskill State Park is extremely unique, and I didn't realize that for a number of years until meeting lots of new people and traveling to new places. If you look at the national park system in the United States, you see that it's skewed very heavily to the West Coast and the
Yeah.
center of the country. And that's not because those areas are more beautiful or more worthy of protection. It really has to do with just the history of how our country took its modern shape, right? So
Hmm.
folks came over from Europe, and the East Coast was settled and populated a lot sooner than the rest of the country. So when the federal government gets around to creating park systems, the East Coast was populated, it had cities, the land was privately owned. It just was practically more difficult to form national parks in the East Coast, right?
Hmm.
So New York did something that was way ahead of its time, in my opinion. They carved out enormous state park systems. So it's still kind of the best kept secret. When I tell someone I'm from New York, they think of Manhattan, but New York is a very, very rural state.
Yeah.
And the Catskill State Park is I think 750,000 acres in size, and the Adirondack Park, someone could correct me if I'm wrong, it's like 5 or 6 million acres.
Shoo.
So this is enormous, and you can actually fit. I wrote it down here: the Grand Canyon, Yosemite, Everglades, and the Smokies inside the Adirondacks together with room to spare.
Good grief.
Yeah, so to tell my story, you're in an area where there's not many people. We're living in a state park that is, like I said, 750,000 acres of public land where not many people live.
Hmm.
So the idea of becoming self-sufficient, the idea of being able to fix your own stuff, or even what you're devoting this podcast to, you start thinking about what you're going to do to make a living or the occupation that you're looking to. We're kind of a small knit community, and the opportunity in school to go work with somebody that does plumbing or electric, or they're a carpenter or a stonemason. I really enjoyed that at a young age. So I helped a lot of friends and family that worked in those occupations. But I think the overarching thing is just this necessity. If you have a farm or something in this area and something breaks, usually you learn how to fix it yourself, or you're going to be waiting a long time.
You were exposed to a lot of folks showing you how to do things at a young age then because it was a necessity.
It was a necessity, and it's more than that, right? It's like a culture or a spirit to be able to take care of yourself. And we get into a lot of off-grid living on the channel, but this is
Yeah.
an area where there wasn't an electric grid uh, for much later than most of the country. So,
Hmm.
people here had a leg up when it came to getting things to be powered off of the national grid system.
Hmm. So let's move forward to where you've grown up, you've had a lot of exposure to folks, masons, plumbers, electricians, etc., that are showing you how to do things. You're soaking up all that information. What what was did you have any formal training? Did you go to college, or kind of how did that play out?
I did, but my story is a far, there's a lot more meandering than just like a straight path to what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
But it all relates, and I hope like with your audience that they understand and can benefit. Learning about a job or learning about what you might want to do for a living. In this area, it was beat into my head from a very early age that you want to find a career that has benefits and ideally a pension.
Yeah.
And the idea was, and this was something that I'd hear from my grandparents and my parents and aunts and uncles, like, there's such a value, even if you pass up some more money in the short term. The idea that after 25 years, 20 years, 30 years, this organization that you're trading your labor for is going to pay you for the rest of your life
Yeah.
was a really big deal. So, at the same time that it was important to learn those skills, there also was like a strong familial pressure to actually find a position that had that pension and benefits, and for the most part the trades in our area did not.
Okay.
So I actually went into being a New York State school teacher,
Hmm.
and a lot of people in my family went into being in law enforcement or a corrections officer within one of the state-run prison systems. My grandfather worked for New York State Electric and Gas, which was kind of semi-private, semi-public organization that provides electricity to folks. But again, it was a job that you sign up for, and in 25 years, we're going to pay you for the rest of your life. So
Right.
that's hard to do as an electrician or a plumber because there's not the same union work here. You'd have to be traveling down to the city. Otherwise, you're just going to be run your own business, right?
Yeah.
So I actually, I went a different direction. I went into being a school teacher.
What did you teach? What subject?
I taught physical education.
Oh, right
Uh,
on.
yeah, this is, it's so funny. And why I was so interested in talking with you, I just love the idea of like a jobs podcast
Hmm.
because, I really did have enough uh, kind of foresight and good influence in my life that when I thought about what job I wanted to do, I viewed like a phys ed teacher as, of course, holidays and the summers and
Yeah.
and all of that exciting stuff. But the idea was like I thought it was something that I would absolutely love, just working with kids and their health and sports and becoming a coach. And it's definitely something that early in life was like a major influence or a major desire, and that's what I went off to do. So I taught pre-K phys ed and health. I did it for almost a decade
Oh.
in the local school, just 10 minutes away from where I grew up. So I,
Hmm.
I landed a pretty cool job there. But how I got from there to what I'm doing now is a bit of a story. That's we've taken a lot of turns on the road from there. So.
Well, yeah, sometimes you meander into your dream job, and I think you've done that. So let's dig right in. You've been a teacher for 10 years, and then walk me through that meander. Take me down the trail.
I'm glad it's long form podcast. So interrupt me
No,
if
you're
I
good.
get too rambly with it.
You're
But
good.
for me, all of this stuff has a deep impact, right? I try to think about the big questions. Like, you hear the adages, like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I took all of that stuff to heart. So I went to college. I actually accelerated what I was doing. In New York State, you have to have a master's degree and certifications to teach in the school system. But
Okay.
New York State teachers are paid very well, relatively speaking to other places in the country. So
Hmm.
I went off, I got the degree, I studied kinesiology, human movement studies, got my teaching certification, and I actually landed that job, which is kind of unusual. I was 20 years old during my job interviews, and not even 21 when I was hired to start as a full time teacher. So I wasn't even
Wow.
old enough to drink, but I had students that were 19.
Good grief.
Yeah, so I really worked hard to get that position. And in a rural school district like that, there's a lot of opportunities. I became a three sport coach, which that's three separate paid positions.
Hmm.
I was an assistant to the athletic director. I ran a summer recreation program. I was kind of a workaholic. I still am. So I found a way really early on to actually make a lot of money teaching in New York State. So I set off to build my own house. Um, that's part of the skills I had developed when I was younger. But looking back, I developed more skills during that process than all of the years before.
Yeah.
I even then I could YouTube wasn't what it is now, but I could like look up in books like the proper way to create a multi-branch circuit on your electric panel. Like, I really wanted to build the house myself.
Mm.
So I did that. And, to fast forward a little bit, or to do the old Seinfeld yada, 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 if any of your viewers know
Yeah,
what that
I
means.
do. Yeah.
So, yada, yada, yada. I just woke up one day after teaching for 8 years. I had a beautiful home, nice cars and toys, and was in a long term relationship and doing what should have been my dream job, but I just wasn't happy. Hard to put your finger on it, but I just simply wasn't happy. And if I could, offer something to somebody that listens to your program, like, it takes a little bit of courage and a little bit of bravery when you identify that, to just be willing to make a profound change. And in my situation, I was drinking too much. I definitely developed some alcoholism,
Mm.
and anybody who's been through that, it's like a dog chasing its tail. It's like, am I drinking because I'm not happy, or am I not happy because I'm drinking so much?
Right.
And the truth is, it's like one hand washing the other, right? It's
Hmm.
just they feed each other. So, I wasn't a mess. I was still highly functioning, doing a good job at work. But I reached a decision point, a critical juncture where I had to make some tough choices. And when I decided to quit drinking, I thought I was just going to take like a leave of absence from work and just kind of get my head on straight and go back. But that experience was profound enough that I questioned everything. And I said, you know what? I'm not afraid to just start over. And it was kind of baby steps, but I got into like meditation, something that we can do to kind of manage our stress and kind of
Yeah.
get our head on right.
Hmm.
So I went to a local Zen Buddhist monastery,
Hmm.
and I thought, okay, I'll come here for a week, and surely I'll leave an expert in meditation, right? But something amazing happened. I one week turned into 2 weeks, turned into 2 months, turned into 6 months, and before you know it, I had resigned from teaching. I left my job, kept my license in case I wanted to go back. But I had rented that house out because I was living at the monastery. So all of a sudden, that rental income gave me enough money to stick around. And I said, all right, I'll do this for a year. And then I'll go back into the rat race. I'll get I'll get another job in the district or take on a college coaching position or something. And life is strange. You know, 1 year turned into 2 years, and I actually met a woman there, and we're engaged. You know, it's been
Mm.
a while, but before you know it, I had sold my house, had no intention to go back into teaching, and a position opened up at that Zen monastery where they needed a facility director. They have 1,500 acres of land, roads and buildings, some off-grid buildings, and they needed someone to serve as the director of that facility, as and they had another one in Manhattan. So I actually ended up uh, getting a career out of that effort to go meditate for a week in the woods. So
You weren't kidding. That was a meandering, but
that's
that's
yeah, that
funny how
is
that all
not
works
your
out.
average.
No, no, you threw me a couple of curveballs there, but that's a really interesting story, and I do want to congratulate you on getting past the alcohol. Sometimes that is a major obstacle for folks, and for you to accomplish that, that speaks a lot to your internal fortitude. So congratulations.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But I mean, again, I hope if anyone has ever been through this that's listening, the idea is I am super happy. my
Right.
my worst days today are better than my best days then, and what I had then seemed picture perfect. That was the career I wanted, the house. Everything is different today, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. That experience was the foundation that pushed me to a whole new world that I never knew existed. So I don't regret anything. I feel very grateful for those meanderings.
I do have one question about you said that you were unhappy and when you were teaching and you kind of saw that you needed to make a change. What was the if you could put your finger on it, if it's even possible, was it
Hmm.
just the fact that you didn't feel like you were doing what you should be doing? Was there a big creative itch that just was never scratched and you felt unfulfilled? Was it all of the above? Was it the rat race? Kind of walk me through what was at the core of that that finally propelled you.
So this is a really good question, right? And I think sometimes the answer is very simple, but it's subtle.
Yeah.
There's this realization that time is so precious. Like, what do we want to do with the day that we have ahead of us? What do we want to do this year? What do we want to do with our lives? And most of the time, we have no idea. Um, we kind of sugarcoat it, but go work in a school and see like a guidance counselor trying to help people figure out what they want to do with their lives. We have no idea.
Right.
But for me, I knew that teaching definitely did scratch that itch,
Hmm.
but the most significant contract we ever enter in our lives is that we, within the United States and the world at large, we just enter this contract where we're going to trade our labor for money.
Hmm.
So every day, no matter what job we go into, I'm going to trade my time for some money. And depending on our skills, experience, or just the market, some people's time is worth more than others.
Hmm.
Um, but even in a job like teaching that I thought would have so much intrinsic value, the question came like, is this really what I want to do every day? Is this really something that's making me happy? And I couldn't put it in perspective at the time, but I've since come to realize that if you're miserable, you'll bring that with you anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
uh,
true.
I have a friend of mine. We talk about it when we're camping. People see that I travel the country with a little teardrop camper all the time, and they're, oh wow, it must be so amazing to be in New Mexico or the Rockies or Florida. And the joking answer is like, don't worry. If you're miserable, you'll be miserable in a beautiful place, the
Yeah.
same that you are anywhere.
Right.
So I don't know how well I'm answering that question. The idea was I came to realize that even though I felt like I should have been happy doing that for a living. I simply wasn't,
Yeah.
and I had to find a new way, a new contract to exchange my time with.
Sure. Well, no, everybody has that thing. Some people are just as passionate and satisfied being a teacher as you are being a content creator, and you're teaching
Mhm.
people. You're just doing it in a different medium that is
Exactly,
is more
exactly.
satisfying for you. So, just because one person, it doesn't mean there's a problem with the job. It just means it's not a right fit for that person, and they need to find something else. And that's what you've done.
Yeah, and I mean, part of learning those lessons was like in the early days, even at the monastery, taking on those facility jobs. I could be plunging out a toilet. I could be making a trash run and sorting garbage and compost, and I was making 1/10 the money doing a job that quote unquote should be less desirable, and I was way more happy.
Hmm.
So you don't know. You can't always take somebody else's word for what brings you some enjoyment in life. But yeah, ultimately we're going to get to becoming a content creator. But that was kind of the culmination where I still feel like I get to teach and work with people, but I'm getting that. I'm getting that trade of my time that feels free, and it just feels like a life worth living.
I'm jumping ahead to the question I'm about to ask, but I want to make
Mhm.
sure I ask it in case I forget. You travel all over the place, but
Mhm.
you also do a lot of testing of equipment. You're going to be, I'm sure you do some filming and whatnot. Does does the work side of the travel take the joy out of the travel, or does it ever feel, and I know this is almost kind of silly to say you're complaining because you have to do some filming when you're going to the Rocky Mountains, for example.
Sure.
There should be no complaining there. But does does the spontaneity go away, or does just the I'm living the life, I'm on vacation kind of thing go away when your trip has structure to it for the filming and the products and all that kind of stuff?
That's a brilliant question, and it's something I tackle and juggle with every single day.
Hmm.
Because if you take something that you absolutely love
Yeah.
and you turn it into the constructs of a job, it can steal the joy out of that.
Yeah.
And much of what you pointed to, I have to like admit going into this. This is an extremely privileged position to be in. Some folks have to go exchange their labor for money to make the bare minimum
Hmm.
to be able to avoid the hardships of life, right? I have to pay my rent. I have to pay the power bill. I don't have a choice to go do something I love. I understand that.
Yeah.
And I think for me, with the experience that I had, I am very, very cautious. And when we get into this more, you'll see that I'm probably missing 75% of my occupational opportunities
Hmm.
by just not taking deals or entering in. An example would be I don't film probably 90% of my outdoor recreation. The channel it comes from about 10%, and you never see my fiance has never been in a video. She just doesn't she just doesn't want to be involved. Like the filming of DIY outdoor life is just a, a fraction of what I'm actually trying to do on a daily basis. So
That's intentional though, to keep that kind of at bay so it doesn't steal your joy from the trip.
that's exactly it.
Okay.
You go for a 3-week trip. I might try to organize something to put out a 10-minute video. But if you're swinging cameras and working with mics and trying to charge batteries, you're not necessarily enjoying those Rockies in the same way.
Hmm. Well, thanks for joining me on that rabbit hole. Let's go back to the main trail that we were walking down. And you have been working at a monastery. You've been there for a few years. You're doing the property management, the maintenance, that kind of thing. Walk me through the next part of your trip.
Yeah. Long, strange trip. I wish I could get more easy for you, but it's nothing has been simple in my life. It's always
Right.
been different.
Mm.
So I meet a wonderful woman. Part of my job as the facilities director comes with a cabin on the property that is mine. Um, so the monastery, huge property. Monastery is a couple miles up the road. I live at the gate, the entrance in that home. So it's not like I'm living inside the monastery proper. So I do meet somebody, we start dating, and it's not, I have to explain that because people are like, you were dating in a monastery. No, well, no, I did have my own house. So
Right.
um, she worked semi remotely, but her occupation at the time was in California.
Hmm.
So we're 3,000 miles away. So as dating became more serious, a large part of our occupations these days that I'm sure you've dealt with on your podcast and a lot of the viewers have dealt with is she got the opportunity to work completely remotely.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal. She was able to actually move from the West Coast to the East Coast and do her job in upstate New York. Well, we had big ideas and dreams. We were going to do this, we were going to do that, we were going to travel. We had all these ideas. And no sooner did she unpack her bags than on the news, you start hearing about a strange virus
Oh
that's
boy.
spreading on cruise ships. And, New York was a bit of the epicenter there. We had all of these ideas of what
Mhm.
we were going to do. And what we were actually doing was like spraying our mail with Lysol, and we weren't allowed to leave our home.
Yeah.
So, so life throws you curveballs. We were at a loss. What? Holy cow! We made this huge life decision to kind of do this thing on the East Coast in the middle of the woods, and the world is upside down. And I actually started viewing these tiny trailers, these tiny campers, as like, wow, there's really something to this. So it's 1,500 pounds, give or take, as an average size. You could tow it with almost any vehicle. It's got a little kitchen. You can make your own food. Uh, you tow it behind your car. I could go visit her family, which was very important to her. Obviously, they were in New Mexico, you know, 3,000 miles away from home. I could
Mhm.
go back to the West Coast. We could go do things that when you weren't allowed on airplanes and you weren't allowed in public spaces. I thought, well, what would stop us from just going to remote areas? You can work from cell service. And so we jumped into this teardrop camper lifestyle, and I just thought it was the coolest thing that I'd ever seen.
Huh. You started with Bushwhacker, if I remember right. Right?
I started with a bushwhacker. I knew very little, but I knew they were cheap.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to be honest, I did a lot of research, but really it came down to I felt like I could fix it myself, change it, modify it, take it off grid. I had those skills, and there was a bushwhacker place when I was early enough in the game that a bushwhacker was like $8,900, and other teardrop campers were like 18, 19.
Yeah.
They're shockingly expensive for beginners. They don't realize how much they cost. Those prices have like doubled.
Yes.
So it was modestly affordable, like within my budget, to get this cheap one and to get out and try to, we had a dog, and we were like, let's just do some travel during the pandemic. We can cook our own food and take care of ourselves. We don't need to go to any public areas. We could be outside. We don't have to wear a mask. We could hike, and so it really was an adaptation to a pandemic.
Yeah. Where
uh,
where did the shift occur? You you see the value in the camper, you see the ability to travel when the world is just kind of collapsing in on itself and there's a bunch of noise and drama going on, and but you see kind of an avenue for a fun adventure, a little bit of normalcy. Where did it shift into I'm going to start filming things about this, and where did the content creation stuff kind of start to brew?
Well, it was a gift from the universe, you know, that I got on YouTube, which is what so many of us do now when
Mhm.
we want to learn about something.
Right.
It's like at our fingertips. You know, YouTube is owned by Google. Google is the largest search engine in the world. YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world.
Right.
So every day, people type in, you know, first place is Google, second place is YouTube to learn about things. And I stumbled upon Cosmo Weems'
Yeah.
channel.
Hmm.
He really was one of, if not the first in the game to just do this silly lifestyle channel on his teardrop and do some reviews and just be really authentic, trying to help people out. And his channel exploded. You know, he had videos, several videos with millions of views when that was really big news back then. You know, now
Yeah.
the market has changed. It's a much bigger playing field, but he really was a pioneer there. And I am, and this is nuts, right? This is such a synchronicity, but I am watching his channel, and in a video, he comes to my town, goes to the spots that I'm familiar with, and then he drives to the monastery and knocks on my door.
Good grief.
I am like dropping my jaw. I love this channel. I love this guy. And I'm like, he on video, he is knocking on my front door. So we were closed. So he just said, "Oh, I'll come back another time or whatever." But I reached out first with a comment, and then we were able to exchange some emails and share with him how crazy this story was and that how I had a teardrop camper. And Cosmo was just an amazing guy. He's not with us anymore.
Right.
If people don't know, he did pass away a couple of years ago, but he really wanted to pick my brain about this elusive Catskill State Park. He felt like he had found an insider, right?
Hmm.
Um, we have a lot of campgrounds, but our boondocking opportunities, and for someone who doesn't know, when we say boondocking or dry camping, there's a lot of places in the country where you can camp for free. Some have more resources than others, but the Catskill Park is rich with just places that you can go and not pay any money, staying on the public land to camp. And that's very popular on the West Coast with BLM land and stuff. But on the East Coast, it's a little more rare. So
Hmm.
Cosmo really wanted to know, like, give me the dirt, share me, share with me the inside scoop. And I kind of weaseled my way into being like, well, let's go together. You know,
Hmm.
let's camp together. So when we started hanging out, he realized that I had these skills. Um, he was very knowledgeable, but he would still bring his camper someplace to have a tire change or the brakes worked on,
Right.
and that was something that I felt like there's not that many businesses where I live. That's something I had to do myself.
Mm.
So he wanted me to do a spot on his channel where I would just do little guest appearances and do some maintenance videos. And
Okay.
in the early attempts to do that, he kind of changed my life. You know, he leaned back and was like, "There's no way I'm taking this." He's like, "You have to do this yourself. You know, I'll help you out, but you should have your own channel." Like, I was gonna stick you on for 3 minutes with Brian to do a tire change, but he's like, I really I'm learning a lot, and I think that you should make your own channel." And that man gave me microphones. I didn't even own a smartphone at the time.
Flip phone.
No, I don't even think it flipped. You still had to hit all the numbers multiple
Oh,
times
right.
to send a text. Yeah.
Okay.
So he set me up, showed me how he edits. He was never very good at any of that stuff, but I loved it. It felt authentic.
Yeah.
And I sent him rough drafts. I came out with like 10, 12 videos. We did a collaboration together, and boom, the channel started to grow. I had a couple hundred subscribers, and things were going well. And um, from there, we had planned all of this stuff. We actually filmed a bunch of stuff together, and then he suddenly passed, and I kind of was on my own, and the rest was kind of history. Though the channel took on a life of its own, and I went from trying to find something to do during the pandemic to being like, oh, this is another career opportunity. This is a legitimate thing.
It's one of the questions I always ask is who, if you had any mentors, and if so, who they were. And he obviously was someone who believed in you, took you under his wing, showed you, the editing and all, or how to do the camera stuff, and provided some equipment and everything. It's always nice to have someone who sees something in you and they believe in you, and all you need is that little nudge and a little bit of advice, and then you can just take it and run from there. Even if you're not quite ready, it's like, well, all right, the training wheels are off. So,
Yeah, and the other one I'd have to throw out there was Drew from Playing with Sticks.
oh yeah, I've watched his stuff.
Drew's channel had this like huge steep rise. It just
Hmm.
exploded. For a while, Cosmo was bigger than him, and then now he's 5 times bigger than Cosmo ever got. As far as subscriber base and viewership. I had sent him an email within like the first week of my channel posting. Just kind of, I mean, how out to lunch that I thought that somebody that had such a big program would even like read an email like that.
Yeah.
He took the time to watch my videos and give me this long list of like really clear, honest advice. This is really good. This is not good.
Hmm.
This thing that you're doing is so good. Nobody can teach that. You have that. Run with that. And yet, when you do this, it makes it feel cheesy. Like it was just such great constructive criticism. And Drew and I have become friends. We talk and we've done a couple collaborations and we have some more planned. But that's another mentor that really just set the stage. I'm very fortunate in that respect.
I think these guys, they what they see in you, and I'm not just blowing smoke when I say this. One of the things that attracted me to your videos early on, a number of years ago, is that you speak well. I can see now when I learned that you were a teacher, it kind of made sense because you explain things well. You're relational, you know what I mean? I can just I feel like you'd be a guy that I would just sit down and you would just be talking to me like a friend, as opposed to a bunch of flashy noise and all this stuff. The word authentic is what comes to mind. And Playing with Sticks and Cosmo, you kind of had that just everyday man kind of a thing that I think is a big part of your success, along with your knowledge, is your presentation style. So kudos to you for
Well,
that.
I appreciate that, but I think if they lock you in a monastery and don't let you talk for a while, the floodgates open when you get out. I just talk a lot,
No, that's totally
but it
fine.
it fills up dead air for a podcast. I could keep going. So.
Oh yeah, no, I mean we're here to talk, so that's great. Um, I reached out to you. I'm not a huge channel, and you're doing pretty well for yourself, and you took the time to talk with me on the phone, respond, and here we are. So,
Well,
I
this
appreciate
is
that.
this is an important point. This is one thing that those two, Cosmo and Drew, impressed upon me really early, and it's amazing. This is different than a lot of jobs. When you are a content creator, when the tide raises, everyone comes up together.
Hmm.
It is not a competition, and new content creators need to learn this, whether it's a podcast, a YouTube, an Instagram person. If you live in a small town and you have a shop that sells paint, and the neighbor opens up a shop that sells paint, that's not a very good feeling.
Right.
You're competing for a limited amount of customers. The better you do, the worse they're going to do most of the time. Content creation is not this way at all. When your channel does well or your podcast does well, and you collaborate with other people doing similar things, the same thing, you actually organically grow your niche. And I want more channels doing outdoor content and tiny camper stuff. It gets more people into it. So absolutely, I try to do this as much as possible. I have a bunch of channels that reach out for collaborations or advice or guidance on something, and I try to offer to them what was freely offered to me. It's you want to bring the whole pool up together. You're not competing with anyone.
Right. So, on the topic of content creation, what do you think if someone is listening to this and they're thinking, I want to get into content creation in some form or another, whether it's a podcast, video? whatever, product reviews, I don't know. What do you think folks either miss or they just gloss over when they really need to focus on that particular thing? I think a lot of times we look at it and go, ah, that's glitzy and glamorous, but I know full well once the microphone or the camera goes off, that's when the work starts, and you've got editing and you've got audio levels and you've got clips to make and you've got, you got to put it up on social media, and there's a lot of stuff that's involved, making phone calls, emails. People don't realize the hours that that consumes. But what's your take on that? Someone getting into it early.
It's a tremendous amount of work, but it is very, very difficult to go into it for the reason that I see a lot of people go into it for. I think that's why the failure rate is, if you get into the data on this, the
Mhm.
failure rate is astronomical. Like
Right.
99% of YouTube channels don't get to 1,000 subscribers, and the ones that do tend to peter out from 1,000 to 5,000. People quit. um, it's really difficult to go into this and be like, I want this to be my job.
Mm,
um, it's it's very challenging to know what's successful and what's not. And a lot of the people that consume this media, they see their favorite content creators and they're like, oh, they get all this free stuff and they make all of this money playing with the toy. I could do that too. And the
right.
truth is, yes, you can. Go for it. The more the merrier. But if you go into it thinking that you're going to be financially successful, good luck. It is a happy accident. And when it does happen, and for me, it happened, I got lucky in a lot of respects. But even once it happens, you have some really tough choices to make, because immediately, and you asked this question earlier on, it's like, do you want this to be your full time job? And do you want to steal joy from the thing that you might like most in life?
Mm,
So
right.
if you're into, I don't know, jogging, and you become a jogging influencer, you can stop enjoying jogging in a hurry. I mean, turn it right into work and stress.
Well, I mean, I hate jogging, but I get your point.
I had to use an extreme example of
Yeah,
something
yeah.
I've never done.
What how long did you, from the time that you started doing content creation in your early days with Cosmo, how long did you do that before it became this, I'm making a decision now for this to be my full-time job?
Wow. For me, I fought it every step of the way.
Mm,
Um, this is not going to be probably good advice for some people, but when I did the collaborations with Cosmo and then had a couple successful videos, the inbox became flooded with opportunities.
mhm,
And I'm so glad that I had Cosmo, because you get an offer that says, hey, would you like to use our torque wrench or this tool that I saw you using in the channel? We'll give you $300 and send you a torque wrench. And you're like, oh, sweet, sure. And then you get an email that's like, well, we want you to say that it's the best torque wrench that you've ever used. And you're like,
ah,
well, I don't know that yet.
mhm,
So the moment you write back and say, "Oh, no, 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 no. If you want to send me something, I don't even need the money. You want to send it to me, I'll give an authentic review or not. That's the risk you're taking. If I
mhm,
don't want to show it, or if it's so bad, I feel like if you don't have something nice to say, don't say something." 90% of those people disappear.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you start to see the ugly side. All of a sudden you see that same product appear in 20 other videos and you're like, oh, if you want this to be a job, you have to like sell out and and just take like promo deal after promo deal. And you'll see the audience does not like that. they
right,
they they smell that a mile away.
yeah,
So what I did was I stopped accepting money or exchange. Sometimes I'll take free products for testing as long as they sign my contract, which is like This is 100% authentic. I can say whatever I want. I can do whatever I want with it. If I just want to throw it off a building, I can. If they're so confident in their product that they're willing to do that, then we can talk.
Hmm.
But that's not the usual course. I think the money path is to just say yes to everything. And Cosmo told me really early on, like, it's not worth it. Say no to everything. And if you genuinely fall in love with something that you think would make people's lives better and that company wants to work with you, then that's a good deal. That's a collaboration. But don't just continue to take every deal that ends up in your inbox,
Yeah.
telling people that I just love Subway sandwiches or whatever,
Hmm.
you know.
Well, it reeks of inauthenticity when you're just constantly, this is my new mattress, this is my new rice cooker. Pick whatever topic you want. It just seems like you're a sellout. And I'm not saying that everybody that takes a deal like that is a sellout, but you get my point.
No. Yeah. And I want a double edged sword. You can't not take those either
Right.
because it's very expensive now. I pay for supplemental editing. I have a friend that does a lot that saves me just countless labor to working
Hmm.
with editing. I go and plan trips and work and go to different places to interview people. Like, it's a very expensive production. So you do every once in a while have to say, all right, well, I'll take that rice cooker and just be honest about it. Maybe it will help somebody out.
Hmm.
But you just can't sell yourself out, because people are going to pick up on that right away.
Yeah. If you were just getting into this industry, if, we can't live in the past, of course, but if you could go back and do some things or one big thing differently that would have maybe accelerated your path or maybe have provided uh, a more desirable outcome, is there anything that you look back and see, or was the journey part of what is allowing you to establish a solid foundation?
It's another great question. I mean, I personally I can't think that way.
Yeah.
The latter of what you said is more in line with how I'm thinking. All of the mistakes and stuff like that are what kind of build you to the present moment. You have to accept the whole thing.
Yeah.
But as far as, like, from an advice standpoint, um, make content that you want to watch. Make content that is going to help somebody out, but you have to find a hybrid between what you're into and what you think your audience is into. You
Mm.
can't go one way or the other too sharply. Produce a lot and don't judge yourself. I look at my old content and my cursor hovers over the delete button. Like, that's so bad. I can't
Yeah.
believe I did that. I can't believe I said that. You can't go down that road. You have to just that's a good sign that you're getting better.
Mm.
Is that you don't like the content that you produced earlier.
Yeah.
So I just be true to that and just keep making content. Uh it takes a long time for that algorithm to think that you're worth showing videos to other people. There's a long crawl to get to, a handful of subscribers that engage with your content.
Yeah. When I first started doing this, I don't have any illusions that I'm the next Joe Rogan or anything like that. And I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I started initially just to kind of get some information. I've got two teenage boys, and they're going to have to figure out what they want to do with their lives. And
Yeah,
it kind of frustrated me trying to help them look at careers. We spend so much time in our occupations in our lifetime. It should
yeah,
not be this frustrating to figure out what a job is actually like. So I just started interviewing people. I liked it. And so I just figured I'm going to hit record and put this out there and maybe somebody will like it. But I'm doing it because it scratches a creative itch and I enjoy
absolutely.
it. I get to talk to people like you about, campers and social media and whatnot. It's fun. So,
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's what's going to make your content authentic.
mm,
Is that you're in it to win it. And when you do get to the place where it bogs down a bit and you're like, oh, now it's a job, you'll
yeah.
see it's
Hmm.
the Jobs podcast. So let's be honest with the deep question here is,
Hmm.
like, why, before you figure out what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, you have to spend some time on the why and realize that the why is the most elusive one. Why do we go to work? What type of life do we want to live, and how do we want to trade our time
Yeah.
for some sort of compensation? Or if you're doing nichey things like me and you, a lot of times you're trading your time for very little compensation. So
Yeah.
you have to.
Yeah, it's not monetary, but it's a different type of, I mean, I get a lot of satisfaction out of doing it. So that's my currency for this. But it certainly doesn't keep the lights on, so I have a day job.
Yeah, and you're a
Yeah.
fireman, right?
Yes. Yep.
Very cool. Well, see,
And
that's an exciting job, right?
it can be. It's got its pros and its cons, but which that leads me into the next questions that I want to ask you. What do you like most about your job, and what do you dislike most about your job?
Hmm. All right, so you're getting to be very good as an interviewer. As I tried to turn the tables on you, you jujitsued it right back in
Yeah.
my way. So, um, what I like most about it is I I like to view certain things in my life as a tool that helps leverage me back into the things that make me the most happy.
Hmm.
And this is some little bit of wisdom that I've learned over the years. But it's like when I look at my tiny camper, it's just begging to hit the road. It
Yeah.
just, even if it's for the night, even if I go eat dinner outside, look at the stars, get up at 6 in the morning, drink a cup of coffee, and drive back to work. If I'm working in person, that's fine. Um, it's a tool that gets me outdoors more. Now, I love my dog. I don't want to refer to it as a tool,
Right.
but that dog brings me joy. It makes me
Yeah.
go outside. I walk it. It likes to lay on the couch when I want to lay on the couch. So I don't want to call it a tool, but I think you know what I mean. It's
Mm-hmm.
a gateway to more of the best things. Well, this YouTube channel, I have to sit down and be like, all right, where am I traveling? Where am I going? What type of campers do I want to look at? Is there, this pursuit of engineering an affordable system that runs air conditioning off grid?
Yeah.
It's
Yes.
ridiculous. But
Mm-hmm.
I got there. I don't know that it's affordable, but I could drive to Texas and run air conditioning off my solar battery system without plugging in. Um, I wouldn't have done that without a channel. Part of the pursuit to try to get there is to show people,
Yeah.
so in that sense, the channel has been a tool to get me outdoors more, keep me outdoors for longer, and to engage with people and maybe help them do the same. That's, we called it DIY Outdoor Life. Everyone thinks that means like a channel about DIY lessons, but really it was like get outside yourself.
Yeah.
how to encourage you to get outside. So, what's the other question? What I don't like about it?
Right.
I don't like the type of capitalism that is hovering this world of YouTube. Um, I need to take advantage of my ability to influence, in that I can get new products and things to show to my audience for free or cheap, so that I can expose people to an honest review or an honest perspective on something before they spend their hard-earned money, and then I can do something good with them. I just gave a bunch of really cool off-grid gear to a friend of mine that needed it, and I was able to do that because I had very little money in it. Um, but it is so clear that these companies are every day. The emails I had this morning, they want you to say it's the best. They want you to say that the competition is no good, and they're
Mm.
constantly pulling you into a space that is just trash. It's
Yeah.
like, it, in our real life, if what kind of car do you drive?
Toyotas.
So you drive Toyotas. So you probably have a million positive things to say about Toyota, but you also have some wonky stuff that you're like, God, I hate that Toyota does this.
Yeah,
In a
absolutely.
conversation with a beer at a campfire, that's an authentic conversation. If you came to me and we're talking about your Toyota and you're like, 10 years, bumper to bumper warranty, I'm like, do you work for Toyota? you know,
Right.
uh, best in class towing. Like,
Yeah.
no, so I hope that's clear. I know that's a long way to answer that, but it's there's a weird vibe where they just want you to sell their wares and they have no ethics on getting that done, and then it ruins other YouTube channels for
Yeah.
you because you hear them saying the things that they were trying to pay you to say, and it's like, oh
They have this, it's kind of a scorched earth, short term mentality that's the only thing that matters is these quarters' profits. That's all that matters. And I'm not
yes,
opposed to making money. Hey, we got to make money to survive, but it would be nice if there was some quality and some authenticity behind that. You can make your money, but you shouldn't have to sell your soul to do it. And that's where I think a lot of these things, I turn off most YouTube channels when I'm watching reviews because within the first 5 minutes, they're highlighting something that they just got yesterday and they're trying to sell you on it. And it's not something they genuinely use and like.
yeah, yeah, that's absolutely true, and I also empathize with them because, like, I was getting if you wait 2 years like I used to,
Hmm.
I was reviewing gear that was like ripped up that I really had used for a long time. It's already past when people are buying it. The companies don't care. You lose money. It's like there is a huge pressure to get out on the cutting edge of what the gear is, and hopefully the person you're listening to has the skills and experience to actually give a meaningful review of a piece of new equipment, which sometimes I'm decent at, sometimes I fail at, but it's a reality.
I noticed here, I don't remember exactly when, within the last year, you moved from bushwhacker over to hiker. Is that right?
I have them both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've looked at the hiker. My wife and I have been toying around with the idea of getting one of these, and my short list is the hiker, and then ROG Encore ROG makes a nice one that has a bath in the
Hmm.
back. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen that one or not.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
forget what the model number was, but I really enjoy watching reviews like yours where they do a deep dive into stuff. I love those kind of videos. When I see it's a product and it's 23 minutes long, oh man, that's my morning right there. I get my coffee and I'm ready to go. Um, and so I really like your videos where you explain that kind of stuff. But I think what a lot of people don't realize the work that goes into that, not just, I know you hire out your editing now, but
Yeah.
you used to have to do that yourself, but it's the starting and the stopping and the positioning and having a game plan and an outline. I think that's a lot of what people forget is involved. It's the grind, not just the fame that comes with the
Absolutely.
channel.
And you can't, I mean, I wish I could hire out editing in that all encompass way. I still have to put everything in sequence and get rid of outtakes and cut things to time
Yeah.
and then stitch them all up in editing software. And I'm basically just providing it to somebody who can quickly and more professionally do some graphics and text coming on the screen because that stuff is laborious,
Hmm.
and so, but yeah. Um, and what we're talking about, a bushwhacker, I thought was the best entry level buy on the market. That's why I made the decision to buy it.
Hmm.
But if you look at all of my early videos, I told people not to buy it. Unfortunately, over the last couple months, I've changed that recommendation to a do not buy. I said, do not buy this camper because it leaked and it was wonky and it did this and it did, it was
Hmm.
really, the company was terrible.
Hmm.
To this day, it's been bought and sold. It's owned by different folks, but I would call and ask for help on things. And you think that they would cheat? Oh, this is a content creator. He's going to tell everyone. No, they were just as miserable to me as they were everyone else. So, but what I found by meeting the people, and this is what I wanted to like show on the channel, is that everyone took that camper and no, most people took that camper and made the most out of it. They
Yeah.
learned to fix the silly things. It was cheap enough that when they were done, they had a really solid trailer that they loved, and it just completely changed my perspective. So that the channel steered in that direction. We still try to do like 25 bushwhacker walkthroughs a year,
Hmm.
because everyone is completely different, and the community loves it, um, even if the company is so. Hiker's the opposite for me. Hiker's the most incredible company that I've ever been able to work with. I think their trailers are top notch. They sell them at a great price, but like they really care.
Hmm.
They're on social media asking their owners like, what can we do better? What do you want to see changed? They're putting on gatherings and rallies that they're sponsoring so that their customers can come back together and they can learn from what people's experiences. So I was really excited to hop on with those guys. But my trailer is now more expensive. I don't consider you can get an entry level hiker, but mine is costs a lot of money. I got every
Hmm.
bell and whistle they were willing to put on it, because it just I was camping 100 times a year. It was just worth getting an upgrade.
Wow. You're using it, yeah. I agree with you on Hiker, and of course, I'm not sponsored by them. I don't
Yeah,
even
me
own
neither.
any of
Don't
their
worry.
products yet, but I met I forget the guy's name that does the videos. Is it I forget his name,
Robbie.
but yeah,
Yeah.
I met him at the More Expo
Oh, okay.
last year in Springfield, Missouri. And he was one of the few sales guys that you could tell knew his product. He wasn't just regurgitating a brochure to me, he actually knew his product and the questions that I threw him because I did my homework.
Yeah,
And I find a lot of times I'll go look at a new car and I know more than the salesman. It's like, golly, man,
absolutely.
know your product.
You're not going to do
The
that with Robbie.
no, not at all. No, that guy knows his stuff. And even my wife, we walked away and she's like, man, he really knew what he was talking about. Extremely friendly, knowledgeable, down to earth. So I can see why Hiker is as popular as they are. I'm hoping to see them again and maybe make a decision this next April and
Yeah,
the More Expo in Springfield, Missouri. I don't know if you go to those or not.
I'm gonna try to. The Missouri stuff and the Indiana stuff, it's difficult. There I
Yeah,
have to. It's a long drive to get in there,
it
and
is. Yeah.
but I have to start doing that more. But yeah, Bob, who kind of runs the outfit, Robbie,
Hmm.
who I would miss people if I tried to mention everyone. But Jordan, like I spent a lot of time with those guys. Hung out in the factory. I filmed, I don't know, 6 or 7 videos
Yes.
trying to highlight some of the things that they were doing. I didn't get paid to do that. I went out there and did that because I thought there was a story to be told there. And
Hmm.
the thing I like about them most is there's also no BS. Like I looked
Yeah.
at part of the trailer that had the potential to rust because of the type of framing that they were doing, and the response was like, "Yeah, metal rusts." Like, like we're not going to sugarcoat this. We do have some aluminum options. Aluminum is not, it's lighter and doesn't rust, but it is not as structurally sound as
Yeah.
for the more rugged options. And it was a non-sugar coated answer that was like, if you want something different, we can go that direction, but we're not going to pretend that, it was just a very honest way of dealing with somebody. And I just, to me, it went a long way.
Mhm. Someone that is getting into content creation, are there soft skills that you think are just overlooked and an absolute requirement to possess if you're going to be a successful content creator?
Boy, I don't know. I know that if you were to study this in a college course, there's going to be a formulaic way of doing things that gives you the highest success rate, just like there
Mhm.
is with music. They can put out pop music with a 4/4 beat, with the same 3 chords, and it sells again and again and again. You
Mhm.
could do a YouTube video on the 10 best jobs of 2025 and
Right.
probably be really successful or more successful. I think that's lame.
Yeah. I'll write
So
that off my list. Thanks, Brian.
yeah. So just doing something authentic that
Yeah.
interests you is going to resonate more deeply and probably be more meaningful, like what you're doing versus just being like, tell me in 30 seconds why it's so cool to be a content creator. Like,
Right.
people have a short attention span. So
Yeah.
the content that you're doing and that I'm trying to do is harder to digest for people. But you mentioned Joe Rogan earlier. That dude, what is his podcast, like 3.5 hours long?
Oh, yeah. They're long.
It's wild. Who has that much
Yeah.
time in their day to listen to a 3.5 hour podcast? Obviously, millions and millions of people, because it's the most
Right.
successful one that ever existed.
Hmm. What's your best advice on how to deal with failure? When you make a mistake, I always say it, we're human beings. We all make mistakes at some point, but how we respond to that failure, that's usually what separates um, the wheat from the chaff, so to speak.
You got
What what would be your advice for that?
it. Learn to hug the cactus. Failure
That is a bumper sticker if I ever heard one.
failure is it. If you want to grow a good farm, the first thing you do is cover it with shit.
Yeah.
Sorry, maybe
No, no, no.
I'm gonna bleep me.
Manure. No, that's fine.
Okay,
Manure.
yeah, manure. Sorry.
That's okay.
The idea is, from those mistakes, you have the greatest opportunities, but we've been conditioned to just cringe and wallow in the fact that we made a mistake. When you make a mistake, like, embrace it, own it, don't make excuses for it, and then ask yourself, like, how do I get better from this? And I think that's the best advice that I've ever been able to kind of implement in my own life, because I make a lot of mistakes.
What's next for DIY outdoor life and for Brian? Where do you have your sights set?
So my audience is growing and I absolutely love them. For
Mm.
every knucklehead, because social media likes knuckleheads, right?
Oh yeah.
For
Yeah.
every troll that gets on there and says something and I just sigh, okay, whatever, there's like 100 people that are engaging with the content that are saying, hey, I learned so much from this. I don't even own a bushwhacker, I own a airstream, and I see you got a hiker, and I could never use a hiker, but I still watch.
Mhm.
It just makes me want to go out and meet more people and show people story, because there's nothing better in my mind than a real owner. Even if some are great on camera, some aren't, if they're just telling their truth, I think that's amazing.
Hmm.
I want to do that. Also, the off-grid gear is in a state of revolution. That's like what the PC was going through back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Every single
Lithium
day,
especially.
yeah, you're just getting into a piece of gear that's twice as capable for half the amount of money.
Hmm.
And I would like to help people navigate through that space the best that I can, because a lot of the content creators in that space are pure, they are just on the payroll. They are
Yeah.
just trying to sell, sell, sell. If I find a piece of gear I like, I have no problem selling it. But it's a tricky space, and I'd like to be there to help people navigate it.
I love the off-grid uh, campers and the hikers and the rogs, and
Hmm.
and there's a million other brands now. These small teardrop campers and square body campers and whatnot. What is so It's so cool, but at the same time, you mentioned earlier a double-edged sword. You can get your Starlink where you have, internet access, high-speed data in the middle of the Rocky Mountains
Yep.
where there isn't a cell service to be found. And you've got the lithium batteries are getting more powerful and smaller and lighter, so you can run air conditioning and heating. And I mean, you can have all the comforts of home out in the middle of nowhere. But at the same time, I think it makes it more difficult sometimes to disconnect. And that's what you really need when you're going camping, when you get away, is to separate yourself from that umbilical cord of social media and the rat race and kind of regroup mentally, relax, unwind. So it's great, but it also, you have to develop that skill of being able to turn it off.
That's it. That is a huge point. And as long as you stay as open-minded as you just were when you kind of explained the dilemma, you're on the right track. Because some people become purists. Oh my
Mm,
gosh, you're not camping. You have a
right.
heat and a memory foam mattress and a refrigerator, and is that Starlink? That's not camping. And then you
Right.
ask them, oh, okay, I'm sorry you feel that way. How many times did you get to go camping last year? I went for Memorial Day and Labor Day. And it's like, okay, I lived 125 days in my tiny camper. Um, so, if it's getting you out more and
Mhm.
keeping you out longer, I'm okay with that. But just like you said, sometimes that experience that's actually helping you unwind and stuff like that is one that's kind of like forced deprivation. So
Right.
with all that gear, you might still want to just head out for 1 or 2 weekends with your backpack and get rained on and stay in a tent and realize how miserable that can be. I love that. That's still one of my favorite ways to get outdoors. But we don't want to get too judgy
Yeah.
with all of the tech, because I can leave for 3 months and my fiance can work on the
Yeah.
road on the edge of national parks and state parks in Arkansas and New Mexico and California and Wyoming, and we couldn't do that 10 years ago. And I'm pretty sure I'm happy about that stuff. So
Gives you options that you didn't have before. So, it opens up the opportunities to go more. And you mentioned Arkansas. I saw your video on Pettit Jean Park,
yeah.
and you like to go in the wintertime, don't you?
I like when those parks are dead.
Yes. I'm the
Uh,
same way.
it to me, that has a unique experience. When things are busy, I try to find where people aren't. Um,
Right.
but it was right on the way. I try to do a cross country trip every January.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, Petty Jean in the winter.
Yeah. Well, let me get on my soapbox for just a second. If you're going camping, if you pack it in, you got to pack it out. I hate being in the wilderness and seeing trash. So we got to be better about that.
We
But
got to be better about that and stop trying to turn places into the place that you're getting away from.
right.
So, if you come to a unique small area that has its own culture, like take it in,
Hmm.
drink it up. It might be different than what you're used to. It might feel uncomfortable, but yeah, we don't have to. We don't have to change every place we go and leave a big pile of trash and leave a big
Yeah,
trace behind us. And you know, yeah, we could do a whole podcast on that.
probably. Brian, I know where to find you, DIY Outdoor Life on YouTube, but any other links or anything you want to say? I really appreciate your time today.
No, youtube.com/DIY outdoor life. Check out the channel. I appreciate it. It might be for you, it might not. But until we grow into some other social media platforms or start the website, we're really just focusing on the YouTube and what it
Right
is.
on.
But I really love what you're doing. Thank you for letting me come on and ramble about some of these stories, but I hope it helps somebody out, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of people wanting to do content creation, and it helps to hear from someone who took an unusual journey to get there, and now they're successful at it. And I've learned a lot today. So if you're happen to find yourself at the More Expo in Springfield this April, please let me know. I'd love to meet up with you.
We'll do. We'll stay in touch. But thank you very much.
All right, buddy.
Yeah,
Thanks.
take care.